So picking up in verse 19, now Shimei, the son of Gera, remember this guy, just cursed David endlessly. And it says he fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan. You know how that goes, right? This is a guy who was so adamantly opposed to him, cursed him up and down, threw rocks at him. His soldiers wanted to kill him. He wouldn't do it. And now that David's come back, Shimei, oh, David, how are you? That's annoying, isn't it? It would be if you were king, I suppose. So he falls on his face. And in verse 19, he said to the king, do not let my Lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did that day my lord the king left Jerusalem. For the king should take it not to heart. I mean, I didn't mean anything by it. That's weird. Verse 20. For I, your servant, know, this is so good, I have sinned. We all struggle with that, don't you? Don't you? Don't we? We all struggle with it, don't you? We all struggle with it, don't we? It's the old saying, it's way easier to say this than it is for me to live this out. When you've blown it, own it. Oh, man. When you've blown it, it's like we blame everybody else and the weather and my cousin. And when I was born, my left leg was shorter. It's like, whoa. You did wrong here, man. So I just commend the guy for saying, I have sinned. Sometimes we can't say that. It's hard to do. But then this is where it gets sticky. Therefore, here I am, the first one to come out to you today of all the house of Joseph to go down and meet my Lord the King. Now he's just kind of filling the air with his own stuff. I'm the first one. I'm here. I care so much about you. No, you don't. You're a weirdo. Verse 21. That's in the next verse. Verse 21. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, shall not Shimei be put to death for this? Because he cursed the Lord's anointed. So you remember this same guy wanted to kill him before when he was cursing. Now he wants to kill him after. He's like, please let me kill the guy. And David is like, what do I have to do with you, sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king swore to him. So, again, there's a good quality in David. There is a good element. Unfortunately, it's not the element that he's operating out of. But here's the good element. He is seeing someone like Shimei, and he says himself, look, I know that I'm the king. I don't need to kill someone to prove it, or I don't need to feel more important by killing somebody. But the thing with someone like Shimei is he's going to just be the same guy. He's not going to change. He just breeds filth and contempt and all the wrong stuff. And these guys know that. These trained soldiers are like, just kill the guy. He's never going to be anything good. He's always going to be a problem. Well, and again, my favorite story is President Abraham Lincoln with his greatest critic, one of his greatest critics, Edward Stanton, who criticized him, just vile, gross, just saying things like, why do people pay to go to Africa when they can just go to the White House and see a monkey? Why are they going to go to Africa to see one? That's what he said. Stuff like that. Cursed him, said, hey, look at his ears. He's just honking ears. He's a monkey. He's crazy. Well, Abraham Lincoln made Edward Stanton his Secretary of War. That's a special kind of human being. And again, I always love to remind you that on his deathbed, Edward Stanton looked at Abraham Lincoln and he said, there lies the greatest leader the world has ever known. That is a man who had been converted by the kindness of his enemy, right? Abraham Lincoln had that quality in seeing past someone's vitriol and loving them and being kind. Unfortunately, though, that's not sort of the same story here. It's not that same element because Shimei is just always up to no good. If you want to know the full story, you could read it, but it's in the Bible. What happens is when David is dying, he warns Solomon of certain people, and this is one of them. He's like, that guy Shimei, his eyes are a little close together. Just keep watching him. He's a weirdo. He said something like that in the Bible. I don't remember what he said exactly. Something like that. Weird guy. So Solomon, remember, the root of his name means peace. He wasn't a man of the sword. He was a man of peace. That's why God would let him build the temple. But Solomon says to Shimei, learns from his father's mistakes. We'll see that tonight. It's amazing. And he says, Shimei, here's the deal. We're not going to have any issues if you stay within the boundaries of Jerusalem. You leave here, I will find you and I will kill you. Okay? Shimei? Yeah, we're good. Well, Shimei goes out not long after. A servant runs away and he goes and chases after him because the servant knows, right? He's bound to these boundaries. So once I leave them, I can be free of this guy. Shimei doesn't care and he goes after him and gets his slave. When he comes home, Solomon says, hey, Shimei, thought we had a deal. You weren't going to leave the boundaries. And you know what Shimei would have done? Oh, well, I didn't know what. Boom. Shot him with a 30-06. No, he didn't shoot. He didn't have a gun back then. But he did kill him. And see, that's the thing. Solomon learned from David. He's like, you can't let someone keep doing that over and over again. Eventually, you just sort of drop the hammer. And so that's the ultimate where Shimei ends up and what happens to him. I'm just trying to wake you up there with the gun thing. Just spook you a little bit. But that's Shimei's story anyway. Now verse 24. Another character that we are come into as David's coming back from Jordan into Israel, Jerusalem. It says in verse 24 that Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king. And he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes from the day that the king departed until the day he returned in peace. This guy stinks, man. And he's going to pour out his sympathies and apologies. And people say that David could smell his sincerity, right? Well, that's a whole other thing. More like Mephibosheth right now, right? This guy's in a bad way. But he was the son of Jonathan, heir to the throne, and crippled kid that David had showed kindness to. And if you remember the story, his servant Sheba had went ahead of him and told David that Mephibosheth had turned. And he's like, he doesn't want to leave Jerusalem. He wants to stay there because he doesn't love you. In fact, he thinks that you're going to die, and then he can just take the throne from there. You and Absalom will both die, and he'll just have the throne back. So this is what David has understood about Mephibosheth, that Mephibosheth has turned on him, this crippled kid that he's shown nothing but kindness to. And that hurts, doesn't it? That's like, what's the deal, man? Well, the problem with what Sheba said, it's all a lie. Sheba never banked on the fact that David would ever be back here. So this is a bad day for Sheba, but it's a confusing day for David, and Mephibosheth is really upset. So there's all that going on. So verse 25, so it was when he had come to Jerusalem to meet the king that the king said to him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? Can you hear the brokenheartedness? And he answered and he said, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. And then he slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore, what right have I that I can cry out any more to the king? And so the king said to him, why do you speak any more of your matter? I have said, you and Sheba divide the land. And then Mephibosheth said to the king, let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace into his own house. There's some beautiful things in here, friends. Some amazing things in this story. Mephibosheth, who was lied about. And it's a painful thing, isn't it? When someone lies about what you said or what you did, isn't it like, and then it's just a mess, and then this other person, even though you didn't do it, is tainted by it. Isn't it? It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing when someone you love has a dream about you, like your spouse. And they're like, I was in a lot of trouble, and I looked over, and there you were, like, smoking cigarettes with bears. Like, I don't smoke cigarettes. What are you talking about? Like, yeah, and you didn't even help me. It's like, well, it's not real. It's a dream, you know? Like, you're mad at me because of a dream. That some friend of mine told me that story. Nothing to do with my life at all. But, you know, that stinks when someone has a weird feeling towards you, but it's not based on reality. And so David, like it or not, has been tainted by a lie. It's so terrible, so terrible. Now, David is in a really interesting spot as a leader, a ruler, a counselor. We might even say as a parent. Parents, we struggle with this. It's a really hard thing when one event happens, two people come to you, and they both tell you a different scenario, which the logic tells you someone is lying, right? Both stories cannot be true at one time. So it's just not possible. And then you go, and it's crazy. You go after one and go after, and you try to figure out, if you bring them together, I found that there's a better chance of it. But even then, sometimes you just don't get a full story from two people. And you don't know what to believe sometimes. You got two very different stories, and one person's crying, the other person's crying. Oh man, what do I do? What do I do? So David is in a really weird spot. And so what he says is, well, haven't I already told you that you and Sheba can split the land? No, that's not what he said. No, listen, here's the story. Here's the history. Remember this. David gives this land to Mephibosheth. Sheba is the overseer's servant. Sheba does the backstabbing, goes to David. David then says to Sheba, do you remember? You can have all the land. I don't care about Mephibosheth. If that's how he's going to treat me, you can have all the land. Now he says, well, you can each have half the land. You see how this is all like a ping pong, weird, bizarro thing? Now, this is so fascinating because he says, just divide the land. And the response from Mephibosheth is mind-blowing because he says, you got the wrong thing. I'm not here for land. I'm just here because I missed you and I'm so glad to see you. He can have all the land, man. Now that might seem like an obscure story, but there's something very fascinating that's happening right here, right now. There's a young 10-year-old boy standing right next to King David, who is Solomon. And he is seeing this scenario, being in an impossible situation where two people are telling two different sides of a story, and the conclusion is split the land in half. Fast forward to when Solomon is king in Israel, brand new to the throne. Remember the story? It's a very famous story of Solomon. Two moms have brand new babies. One of them dies. So the other mom sneaks in the other room and steals the living baby. Well, then the mom, the real mom, goes to King Solomon, the judge of the supreme judge, the supreme court of the land, and says, hey, this lady stole my baby because hers died in the night. And the other woman says, no, it's my baby. She's lying. Her baby died, and she's trying to take my baby. See, that's kind of like, whoa, 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 whoa. Remember what Solomon said? Cut the baby in half. Divide it in two. You can both have half the baby. And the real mother says, she can have all of it. And instantly he said, you are the real mother. You can have the baby. Where do you think you learned that from? From this story right here, don't you think? You can both just split the land in half. He said, I don't want the land. Then he knew instantly, Sheba is a crook. This man is honest. Mephibosheth is a sincere person. Only a sincere person wouldn't actually care to get anything out of this situation. I think that's just absolutely fascinating. That it brings up another lesson, by the way. It's a funny lesson. It's like more is caught than taught. You ever heard that with kids? Gail Irwin was an awesome farmer preacher man, and he had suspenders and the whole thing, and he was just an old farm boy. And he said, I try to teach my kid table manners, but they end up eating just like me. And that's true, isn't it? You can teach kids all you want, but they'll end up doing what you're doing. The other week, this happened. Charlie's not here tonight. I was looking for him. Charlie had his son in his arms in the back over there where he normally is. And Charlie had one of his hands up. And of course, what was his son doing? Had his little hand up as well. That kid doesn't even know why his hand's up. He's just doing what dad's doing, right? That's just how it works. But more is caught than ever taught. You could tell your kids to raise their hand. They wouldn't do it. But if they see you doing it, they want to do it. And so I think David said a lot of things, did a lot of things, but the stuff that David did that stuck with Solomon, like this story, no doubt, is really interesting to think about. Anyways, moving on to verse 31. It says, Barzillai, the Gileadite, came down from Rogelim. And I can't help but think of Lord of the Rings at that point, but that has no connection to the land of whatever that is. And I'm looking at the clock. Just for sake of time, I'm going to summarize these verses here. Verse 31 to verse 38. Not that they're not important, but just to get you the story. Barzillai is an 80-year-old man. And in those days, that's like unheard of to live that old. So to be an older man like that, what Barzillai does, it says in verse 32, is that he showed kindness to David when he had fled from Absalom. And so David says, I want you to come with me. And Barzillai says, no, man. And it's in verse 35. He says, why then should your servant be a further burden to my lord the king? And so they have this exchange. And so interestingly, Barzillai says, no, I won't go. But to show sort of a gratitude, he says, you can take my son with you, Chimham, right here in verse 37. Now, interesting thing, by the way, like totally obscure if you might be into some of these things. Chimham, there's a derivative of his name, and the people that come from him ends up in Bethlehem. And when it says that they were in the house of the inn, there was no room for them in the inn when it was speaking of Joseph and Mary. It's actually referring to this man, Chimham. That's something that only like one out of any of us will care about, right? So I just said it for you. Now, back to the thing here, verse 32, is that he showed up to the king when the king needed help, right? Not everyone does that. In fact, they say the old saying is a friend in a time of need is a friend indeed, right? I just heard a really cool quote on what a real friend is. A friend is when everyone is running out, they are running in, right? When everyone is running away from you at a time in your life, they are running into your life and helping you. And that's who Barzillai was. Without Barzillai and his wealth and using his wealth to bless David, that season would have looked a lot different for David. I have no doubt David would have made it through, but it would have been very primitive and challenging. Barzillai just kind of lavished David. So David's like, let me repay you. Now that I'm a king again, I'm going to spoil you rotten, man, for the last days of your life on earth. And Barzillai is so cool. What he shows us is something, it's a word that we get in the New Testament. It's charity. Charity. You know, they use that word not love, but charity, because, and Chuck Smith says, it wasn't until the time of Christ in literature do we see that word used, charity, for love, because Christ demonstrated something to the world that we really haven't known in that way, in that capacity, is that Christ gave everything for us without expecting anything in return. Because it's human nature, when you give something to someone, you keep a running tally in your mind, don't you? If you're really stingy, you're like, I bought him 2 coffees, he only bought me 1 a month ago. And your mind does that, doesn't it? It's like kind of weird. So we often give, but we want something in return. What's cool is in verse 35, Barzillai is showing, I never gave to you to get something out of it. I gave for a heavenly account, man. I did something for you to show kindness to God and serve him. Please, man, I don't need to come. I'm an old man, he says. I can't even taste food anymore. Honestly, he's like, I'm not going to even enjoy it the way I should. So just go on without me, young buck. And David has this amazing emotional departure. So now, verses 40 down to the end of chapter 19, we would read more of what we started reading in the first part of the chapter, and it's this, that there's a division between north and south. Judah and Benjamin are 2 tribes, southern, and they're there, Jerusalem area. And then the other 10 northern tribes make up the majority of Israel. Now, what's interesting in these verses that we've read tonight, or we were looking at tonight, we're already starting to see something that has a fracture in it. It's the nation of Israel. It's very much like America when we had a civil war, but we can still see it right now. There is a fracture line in our country. And it's not exactly 50-50 or whatever, but there's a fracture line in our country, and it wouldn't take much for it to split. There are many people that would infuse millions of dollars, billions of dollars to get that thing to split, because our broken country, with us fighting against each other, is a weak country that can be taken, right? So there's a lot of people that want that, and you can see that in America, the fracture line sometimes, really clearly. That fracture line is right here in Israel. There's the 10 and then the 2, and they're drawing distinction to it themselves. That's why after Solomon's reign, Rehoboam and Jeroboam split that officially, and from then on it's 2 separate nations in one, the north and the south. But I point that out because that's what we're starting to see tonight, is that Israel has that sort of fracture line that's very fragile. But here's what they're arguing about, once again, is that the 10 northern tribes are saying, well, why can't we welcome David back? The men in Judah make a great case. They're like, well, first of all, we all live down here, man. And furthermore, David just came back. This is something that blows everyone's mind here. David doesn't do a big ceremony. See, Absalom was a man who honored himself and therefore had no real honor. David doesn't do that. David just goes back to the throne and assumes responsibility. That's what's blowing everyone's mind. They're like, well, why can't we welcome David? We'll welcome him to the palace. And they're like, hey, he's not doing a big party. So there's like this big argument about who's who and who's doing what. And they're like, we just live here. This is our land. This is our guy. He's our king. And what's the problem? And so that's what that was what we'd be reading in these verses. And I'll read the last verse. It says that the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. Man, I am always amazed at the power of communication and the power of a conversation. It is amazing to me that you can sit down with someone and have a single conversation. It can change the trajectory of your life and theirs. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? It's like when you're really upset with someone, they're upset with you, and you sit down with them, and you finally hash it out, and almost 7 out of 10 times at least, there's just a big misunderstanding. Like, oh, you saw it? Well, no, that's not what I meant. Oh, I meant this. And then you just talk that thing out, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, I miss you so much. Will you come over for dinner? You know what I mean? Like, that happens all the time. I'm always amazed over and over again at the power of a single conversation and communication. But part of what's so powerful about communication, it's right here in the last verse, when your words are fiercer, as it says here. That's what Charlie Kirk embodied. It was a fierceness. But it was based in logic and truth and reality. That is why, I'm just pointing this out to you tonight, the men in the South, they have a logical framework that they're working within. You understand the 10 northern tribes are operating out of emotion. The thing doesn't feel right. They feel, they don't understand. Listen, guys, stop. That's not what's going on. David came back. We live here. We don't know what he's doing. Relax. And their words were more persuasive because they were logical words. So anyway, wanted to share that with you, seeing as how it was there after all. Chapter 20. There happened to be there a rebel. And again, remember, this rebel is seeing the fracture line, whose name was Sheba, the son of Berechiah. And my mama always said, never trust a man named Sheba, but that's neither here nor there, right? A Benjamite who blew a trumpet, and he said, we have no share in David, nor do we have inheritance in the son of Jesse. Everyone to his tent, O Israel. He's got 3 points and no poem, right? 3 points. Here it is. We have no share in David, nor do we have inheritance with the son of Jesse. Every man to his tent, O Israel. So, what's fascinating about this is G. Campbell Morgan, the beast from the Middle East, man, one of my favorite commentators. He was born December 9th, 1863. I think like Civil War time. Crazy, right? He dies May 16th, 1945. I'm telling you that because the quote I'm about to read to you was said before 1945. And you think about the world we live in today. Listen. In light of this rebel, Sheba, G. Campbell Morgan says this. This story should teach us that popular and plausible catchwords ought to be received and acted upon with great caution. Plausible and popular catchwords. That is what drives so much of the political world around us today, isn't it? Don't you find yourself in the last 15 years, depending on how old you are, maybe longer than that, but like the catchphrase and the terminology and the groups and Antifa and BLM and LGBT, and we got like acronyms for everything, right? And we memorize them. I remember when LGBT came out. Yeah, LGBT. I was like, I got to remember 4 letters? Like, what in the world does that even mean? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans. I'm like, okay. Then they're like, oh, and A, and plus, minus. I'm like, whoa. I was lost at 4 letters, man. We're adding to that? Blew my mind. I think it was Rush Limbaugh that called that thinking that we have in America the alphabet mafia, right? Like, what is going on? Why do I have to memorize all these acronyms for everything? I'm not in the military. They do that, and that makes sense, right? Get in the COW and drive down to the BDT. It's like, what the heck are you talking about? We're just civilians, man. We're doing this stuff to ourselves. But you understand what that is, right? It's catchwords. It's phrases that we can glom onto and sell people on. Antifa. Ooh. I got to figure out where I stand on that. No, you don't. It's weird. It's just like, but we get caught into it. And G. Campbell Morgan said, hey, we should receive and act upon those kinds of things with great caution. Because here's a guy who's got his catchphrase, his slogan. His slogan is like, whoa, let's pay attention to this guy. And his point number 2 in his slogan that's very interesting to us, we have no inheritance with the son of Jesse. See, he reminds everyone that David is not from a line of kings. David is a farmer's son. It's like, why are we going to follow this clown? He's not even a king, man. He's a farmer's son. We got no part in that guy. What are you talking about? And he cast out. So this is Sheba's glorious rise. Now, again, just like Absalom, and I said it about Absalom, I said about Sheba, men that fire up these kind of rebellions are seldom good for anything else. They're not good leaders. They're good rebels. They're not good leaders. You will find, as we see, it comes to nothing because they don't know how to lead. All they know how to do is rebel. And it doesn't take a lot of brain power to rebel. It really doesn't. It takes a lot of power and ability and skill to lead. So, every man, it says in verse 2, just goes to their tent. David comes back and starts to clean up his household. The 10 concubines that Solomon had slept with, he puts them away in their own chambers, and he provides for them, but they're widowed, as it were. And verse 4, so important we pick up here. The king said to Amasa, assemble the men of Judah for me within 3 days, and be present here yourself. Verse 5, so Amasa went to assemble the men of Judah, but he delayed longer than the time which David had appointed to him. That drives me crazy, man. You had 3 days' notice. This is a guy who cannot even get out of bed. You remember who Amasa is, right? He's the new general over Israel, the DEI hire. Got to have him. Really? The guy can't even show up on time. He shows up late. He's like, hey, what's going on, guys? They're like, hey, everyone's split. They already left. Oh, snap. He is literally a clown, like a clown show going down the road, as we're going to see in a moment. This guy can't even show up on time. That's how embarrassing he is. Just a little note there in verse 5, very helpful. He couldn't even be at the set appointed time of David. So, David, realizing he's really not a great general if he can't even be here on time, verse 6, David said to Abishai, now Sheba, the son of Berechiah, will do us more harm than Absalom. Take your Lord's servants and pursue him, lest he find for himself fortified cities and escape us. So now he changed his tactics. He's like, okay, my new commander isn't here. I don't know what the deal is. There's something wrong. That's not good. So Abishai, would you handle this situation? And Abishai was like, all right. Meanwhile, Bonehead is making his way as well. Just funny little note to be made. So verse 7, Joab's men, with the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and all the mighty men, went out after him. And they went out of Jerusalem to pursue Sheba the son of Berechiah. And when they were at the large stone, which is in Gibeon, Amasa came before them. Now Joab was dressed in battle armor, and on it was his belt, a sword fashioned in its sheath at his hips. And as he was going forward, it fell out. And then Joab said to Amasa, are you in health, my brother? And Joab took Amasa by the beard and with his right hand to kiss him. And Amasa did not notice that the sword that was in Joab's hand, and so he struck him with it in the stomach, and his entrails poured out on the ground. And he did not strike him again. Thus he died. And then Joab and Abishai his brother pursued Sheba the son of Berechiah. Meanwhile, verse 11, one of Joab's men stood near Amasa and said, whoever favors Joab and whoever's for David, you better follow Joab. In verse 12, but Amasa wallowed in his blood in the middle of the highway. And when the men saw that all the people stood still, he moved Amasa from the highway to the field and threw a garment over him. And when he saw that everyone who came up had halted, Well, in verse 13, he was removed from the highway, and all the people went on after Joab to pursue Sheba, the son of Berechiah. So we need to know about this character. Very, very important that Amasa, this is how he comes to his end. Again, useless character. Failed at everything he ever did. Could not get anything right, and now he's allegedly sort of the captain of Israel. He's not even marching with the army. Just a total mess. Here's what I don't know, and I'm going to give you both scenarios. Both are probably true either way you slice it. No pun intended, actually. But really, truly no. But here's the thing. If you read verse 8 and 9 again, particularly verse 8, it talks about Joab's armor and how the sword fell out. Here's what we don't know. I mean, you might figure it out from the commentators in the language. It's Joab's armament. But the belief and the idea is that Amasa is wearing it because he's now the general. So he's wearing Joab's old garb. And as he kind of stumbles up to Joab, the sword falls out because he doesn't even know how to wear the garment right. Anything. He's just like a mess. And his sword falls out. And Joab, as he goes to grab this guy in an affectionate kind of way by the beard, he grabs that sword with his left hand, which predominantly everyone's right-handed. So he does this smooth pickup move and gets him in the guts like that. So it's either just showing exactly how much of a buffoon that Amasa is, or some believe that and argue that it's actually just his ability, Joab's ability to move swiftly. And Joab makes it look like he made a clumsy mistake, like, oops, drops his sword. And he does such a move in such a way where he gets the guy and guts him like that. Either way, it just puts Joab in a position where Joab is the man, right? Like Joab is sort of like top-notch military leader in that generation, versus a guy who has no idea that he's getting his guts cut out from underneath him. Like, do you see the contrast? And the fact that David would even put him in this position is just embarrassing to everybody. And it's funny. It's not funny. It's sad. But it's like as everyone goes by, they watch him wallowing and like wailing, and they're like, oh man, they can't stop and help but look at it, which is really sad, isn't it? And that's a human condition, by the way, right? Like, you've seen this footage of this young lady that got stabbed on the train and no one did anything initially. It's just human nature. Like, people don't know what to do and they just freeze. They just like watch. So everyone just goes and watches this guy just wailing and wallowing, and they're like, ooh, man, that's nasty. Some guy has like the courtesy, like, well, let's drag him off the side of the road and cover him up and let him die with dignity. But as that all goes on, someone's like, well, I'm with Joab. And someone's like, me too, let's go. And everyone goes with Joab. So that hiring process didn't go very well for David. So we'll read on. Hopefully none of our jobs end like that, by the way. That would be, you're fired and your guts are on the ground. It's like, whoa. Anyways, verse 14. And he went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel and Beth-Makkah and all the Berites. And so they were gathered together and also went after Sheba. So verse 15, they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth-Makkah. And they cast up a siege mount against the city, and it stood by the rampart. And all the people who were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. And then a wise woman cried out from the city, "Hear, hear, please say to Joab, come nearby, that I may speak with you." And when he had come near to her, the woman said, "Are you Joab?" And he said, "I am." She said to him, "Hear the words of your maidservant." And he answered and said, "I'm listening." Now, there could be some lessons here for us, friends, no doubt. But one of the main lessons, sincerely, is right here. This woman realizes these guys have been chasing this guy everywhere. He's probably in our midst, and they're going to come here on a rampage and start killing random people. And she explains that they're a city known for wisdom. But she does something that we can all learn from here tonight. She takes initiative. She does not leave the fate of everyone into the hands of chance. Right? You know what I'm saying? Here's the lesson for us. Take it. Sometimes we need to just take initiative and say something when we need to say something. What I mean is, like, when we're all younger, when we're starting to grow, like, you know, I've learned something and I'm midway there. I'm like the halfway point, 35, 36, getting close to 37, halfway. So as I get close to that other side and I'm like right in the middle, I start to see where I came from, where I'm going. And when you get older, you know what? The common thing is people don't care anymore. Like, I'll just tell you what I think because I don't care. I've lived life and you bother me, right? And they just tell you, whoa, that's awesome, man. When you're younger, though, you want to please everybody and you don't want to offend anyone and you're not really sure what to do. And so sometimes you just sit back and wait for circumstances to unfold. And in that process, and maybe some people never grow out of it, they sit back and hope good things happen to them. Like, oh, I'm going to call this number and deal with this person, but I'm going to hope that they give me the benefit of the doubt and they give me a chance, right? Or you go to the bank and you want a loan and you're like, I hope they're going to be for me. And they're like, nah, you don't got the money for it. You're like, yeah, but I'm a good person. They're like, we don't care. Leave our office, right? They're like, but you could actually talk to that person and say, hey, hold on a minute. I'm not leaving the office until I get the money. No, that doesn't work either, actually. I don't know why I just said that. But there is such a time as taking initiative, man, and telling someone something. And because here's what I've learned in my life. If you sit back and leave chance to it and hope that people are going to fight for you and do the best for you, they won't. It's not, almost never will someone like, oh, seem like a good person, I ought to help them out. No, they're going to do what's best for them. They're not going to help you out so much. It's just the way life is. So this woman does not sit back and say like, well, I hope I don't get killed. I hope everyone's okay. I hope nothing bad happens. I hope. She's like, hold on a second. Where's Joab? Bring him up here. I want to talk to him. She does something we could all learn from. She takes initiative. And she speaks up. She doesn't leave it to circumstance. And so she says, hey, listen, here's the deal. So he says, I'm listening. Verse 18, she spoke saying, they used to talk in former times, saying they shall surely seek guidance at Abel, which is where they're from. And so they would end disputes. In verse 19, I am among the peaceable and faithful in Israel. You seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel? Why would you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? And Joab answered, and this is a hardened warrior, man. He would have done exactly what she just said. He would have gone in there and sliced and diced everybody until he found the guy and killed him, and probably killed more people anyway. And Joab in verse 20 answers, hey, far be it from me that I would swallow up or destroy. That is not so. But a man from the mountains of Ephraim, Sheba, the son of Berechiah, by name, has risen his hand against the king and against David. Deliver him only, and I'll depart from the city. So the woman said to Joab, watch, his head will be thrown to you over the wall. I'm sure he's thinking, like, are you single? Or you're my kind of woman, like, she's crazy, right? And we're going to throw his head over in just a minute. Verse 22, when they did it, of course, you know what they said, right? Heads up. Anyway, verse 22. Then the woman, which is really interesting saying when you think about it, isn't it? Like, where did that ever come from? Maybe this story, I don't know. Heads up. Anyways, verse 22. Then the woman, in her wisdom, went to all the people, and they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Berechiah, and they threw it out to Joab. Then he blew a trumpet, and they withdrew from the city, every man to his tent. So Joab returned to the king at Jerusalem. Now again, I suppose there's plenty of lessons in all of that. If I wanted to be funny, obviously we could say how to keep your head in times of trouble, but that's not what we're trying to do, right? We want a real lesson from this. And I think the main lesson is what I've already said. It's that she saw the potential for way things could have gone. She said, I got to have this conversation. I cannot let this unfold. And again, as I said earlier, it is amazing, a single conversation, the power within it, isn't it? One conversation, one communication, totally different. In a very spiritual sense, friend, in a very real sense. It's one of the things I love about church and doing what we do here. And it's so sad that people devalue it in the days that we live in. But I am more and more aware of the fact that in a church service, for example, like a conversation, in a Bible teaching, that someone's life can be radically altered and changed. And I truly never know when and how and why. All I know is when I come up here and speak the Bible best I can, sometimes I deviate and say things I shouldn't, all that kind of stuff. But I never know, even in that, when God uses that. Do you know that? And in fact, I'm amazed when people come up and say, man, when you taught this tonight, I listen, I'm like, I don't think they were listening because I didn't say that. Like they heard something in their head that I wasn't saying. I'm like, I love taking credit for it. I'm like, yeah, I said that. It's pretty cool, huh? I actually didn't say that, but I like that you think that I said that because you were daydreaming about something God was talking to you about, whatever, But it is amazing how God can speak to you. I'll give you one example. I know we're pretty much at the end here, so I'll give you one example. This was close to 2 years ago. It was right here in this building. On a Sunday morning, randomly, I was teaching the Bible like I do, and all of a sudden this thing comes across the radar, and I send it without even thinking about it truly. It was something I had heard in a Bible study 15 years ago. And it was about gold and investing in gold. And I specifically said what I think I said recently in a service. I was like, when times are tough, people don't want to eat gold, they want to eat bread, right? They don't want to break their teeth on gold, they want to break their teeth into some bread. When they're hungry, they'll eat a cat. They don't want to eat gold. You can't eat gold to fill your belly. And when times get as bad as people talk about, your gold ain't going to do nothing, right? I'm saying that. I'm elaborating much more than that on a particular Sunday. And I'm telling you, as I stand here today, I did not put that in my notes. I had no plan of saying that. In fact, to me, it was like the weirdest, curveball. Like, why am I even going on about it? And then I'm trying to find my way back to the text. Whatever. Finish the sermon. Get off. A man walks up to me. And he says, Pastor, you just saved me from something. I said, what? He said, I tried all Friday to get this number to go through. All Friday. I was going to buy gold. And I wasn't just going to buy a little bit of gold. I was going to buy $250,000 worth of gold. And I couldn't get a hold of them on Friday. And all I could think about coming into church today was about how I was going to buy gold tomorrow morning on Monday when the phone was available. And I walked into church, and the Lord totally convicted me. And there's no way that I could ever do that with a right conscience today. That's what I mean by a single conversation. Like, that's weird. I told him, I didn't put that in my notes. That's really strange because that's like an amazing moment in someone's life. And that happens all the time. All the time. So whether it's in a corporate sense like this or an individual conversation, it's the most amazing thing that one communication, one conversation can stop a man like Joab on a trail for blood, and he just says, hold the phone, guys. We're not gonna. They built the siege ramp. The next step as they were knocking in on the doors was they're gonna take the city by force. And this woman saved countless lives because she just simply had a conversation with the right person. And again, to finish the chapter, verse 23, 24, 25, 26, it's just Joab is officially reinstated. Can you imagine that? Reinstated once again as the commander of the army of Israel. I think he won that position quite fairly. And so that just tells us his cabinet, tells us David's new cabinet under this sort of new wave of his leadership.